Andrade.
And I'm Eduardo Ramirez.
We are Video Production News.
Today, we will be discussing a topic that always seems to be in the news: terrorism. We will be analyzing the most controversial terrorist groups of all, ISIS.
This terrorist network is at the forefront of news media and garners the most attention since May 2014, when they kidnapped more than 140 Kurdish schoolboys in Syria and forced them to take lessons in radical Islamic theology.
However, how exactly is terrorism portrayed in the domestic and in the international media?
Join us as we shed light on several media publications and analyze and use various concepts and theories such as media framing to better understand the media's perspective on ISIS.
The United States Department of Defense defines terrorism as a calculated use of unlawful violence or threat of unlawful violence to inculcate fear, intended to coerce or to intimidate governments or societies in the pursuit of goals that are generally political, religious, or ideological.
Know your enemy is a saying derived from Sun Tzu's book, The Art of War.
So in order to understand what ISIS is, we have to understand the media myths about them.
First of all, it is important to know that terrorism is not a new phenomenon. For nearly 200 years, when Wahhabi armies have been attacking Iraq in order to wipe out the Shiites in a bloody battle.
They have been using the same three scare tactics since the beginning: violence, fear, and intimidation. In fact, one of the most brutal attacks occurred in Lebanon in 1980 when suicide bombers attacked the U.S. Embassy.
Before we begin our analysis, we will give you an overview of ISIS.
The summer of 2014 seemed to be the year that ISIS emerged as the world's most notorious jihadist organization,
overshadowing even Al-Qaeda,
when they overran a number of Iraqi and Syrian towns.
Also known as the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, and Islamic State ISIS aims to create an Islamic State called a caliphate across Iraq, Syria, and beyond.
They are implementing Sharia law, which is rooted in 8th century Islam, which seeks to establish a society that mirrors the region's ancient past.
Started as an Al-Qaeda splinter, ISIS is known for killing dozens of people at a time and carrying out public executions, crucifixions, and other heinous acts.
Its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, currently based in Syria, controls more than 34,000 square miles in Syria and Iraq, from the Mediterranean coast to south of Baghdad.
The organization is notorious for using modern tools such as social media to promote reactionary politics and religious fundamentalism, along with using it to recruit many new members.
Additionally, ISIS fighters have been destroying holy sites and valuable antiquities, completely abolishing Iraq's rich cultural heritage.
Most recently, once again, ISIS made headlines around the world for 2 attacks in 2 different countries.
On Friday, November 13th in Paris, France,
and last month in Egypt for shooting down a Russian passenger airplane in the Sinai Peninsula.
According to the New York Times, the Islamic State claimed responsibility for the catastrophic attack on the French capital,
calling them the first of the storm and mocking France as a capital of prostitution and obscenity.
These recent attacks, along with the acknowledgement from ISIS that they indeed bombed the Russian airplane, once again divide how the media portrays the terrorist organization.
With our research, we are seeking to explain how the media in America is the key player and frames their reports on ISIS.
We will use several theories to better understand the reporting on ISIS. In fact, there will be 3 communication concepts and theories that will be used to help explain in detail our research findings. These are media effects, which claims that mass media and media culture affects how audiences think and behave.
Second, media framing refers to how the media packages and presents information to the public.
According to the theory, the media highlights certain events and then places them within a particular context to encourage or discourage certain interpretations.
And lastly, agenda setting, which describes the ability of the news media to influence the salience of topics on the public agenda.
That is, if a news item is covered more frequently, the audience will regard it as more important.
Additionally, we will show you how the international news media is more informative when it comes to reporting. As we present our analysis and findings, keep the following questions in mind.
How is ISIS portrayed in the media?
What are the main keywords used in the media to describe ISIS?
Does the media influence the public's perception of ISIS?
For our research, we analyzed 12 news articles and related videos. 6 of the articles were from the United States, including 2 from CNN, 2 from Fox News, 1 from NBC, and 1 from CBS. The 6 from the international media include 2 from Al Jazeera, BBC, Reuters, and The Independent.
Additionally, we used an article from the Huffington Post.
The American media and international media coverage on ISIS is our basis for identifying communication theories to explain the role of media in society.
After reading several articles and watching various videos, we concluded that our research shows there is a considerable amount of hostility from American media regarding ISIS.
The American media is more sensationalist and focuses more on key words when reporting. For example, one trend we noticed was that the words terrorist and Muslim always seem to appear together in articles related to ISIS.
Also, most of the media coverage in the United States is about the group's actions and the United States' reactions.
We found that 5 out of 6 articles from American media show that ISIS is a bigger threat than Al-Qaeda to the U.S. and persuaded readers or viewers into believing that it is true.
For instance, in an article from Fox News titled,
Islamic State bigger threat than Al-Qaeda, FBI chief says,
along with the CBS News article titled,
ISIS a bigger threat than pre-9/11 Al-Qaeda?
both state that the threat of ISIS on American soil is a threat that eclipses Al-Qaeda.
Additionally, the articles claim that the terrorist groups are in the early stages of discussing ways to target Americans with cyber attacks, saying it's a small but potentially growing problem.
As we can see, this is an example of media effects. How the media portrays ISIS can affect or persuade how the audience will react.
Now we will move on to the international news media.
As stated earlier, international media reporting on ISIS tends to be more informative and less sensationalist.
Indeed, we found in an article and video from the UK's Independent titled, Paris Attacks Walid al-Ayl Delivers Powerful Speech Claiming ISIS is Weak, that states that ISIS is in fact weak, contrary to the American media said in the previous articles that it was a huge threat.
The article further explains that ISIS takes credit for any act of terrorism on Western soil, so they appear bigger and tougher than they actually are.
In fact, the article goes on to explain that ISIS is taking credit for attacks not in direct association with the group. It is important that these killings become attributed to patrons of the Islamic State who have obeyed its leadership. Otherwise, media crusaders make such attacks appear to be random killings.
In addition to this article, another article from the Middle East, Al Jazeera, titled, Why the Threat of ISIL is Exaggerated, claims that
the group's ability to sustain its nation-state remains very much in doubt, according to political and military analysts.
If you recall, media framing is how the media packages and presents information to the public.
In this case, the international media is encouraging a different interpretation by reporting that ISIS is not as big of a threat as it actually is.
Islamophobia also seems to be a recurring theme in the news articles and videos that we read and watched.
In fact, all 12 sources when mentioning ISIS make the connection to Islam.
For example, a Fox News article titled
Islamic State terrorists determined to build chemical weapons
demonstrates media framing. Again, by repeating keywords such as terrorist, Muslims, and Islam in the same sentence frequently, the media is possibly influencing the public's opinion while making the topic more relevant. This is also an example of agenda setting.
As you can see, both American media and international news media have different ways of reporting on ISIS.
However, both American and international media reinforce the media framing theory, which is the idea that the media highlights certain events and places them with a particular context to encourage or discourage certain interpretations.
The news stories from the US, especially from Fox News, seem to encourage only one interpretation.
Additionally, both domestic and international media seem to leave very little room for other interpretations regarding Muslims in the news.
I'm Alfred Andrade.
And I'm Eduardo Ramirez.
We are Video Production News.
We hope you have enjoyed this brief presentation on the media's coverage of the Islamic State.
Farewell and good night.